I am your host, Benjamin Wheeler, and I'll have my co host, Anthony Marquetta, along in a minute. Uh, yes, culture. I hate it. I have decided this. You cannot turn it aside, nor uh, shall we say prop it up. After all, there's no point in loving a culture that fundamentally hates you. Now, why would I say that? Do I even need to post the uh, Aztec Batman images, the hilarious Aztec Conquistador Joker memes? Why, Batman? Someone's heart gets ripped out to make sure uh, the sun goes over the sky and rises in the morning. But when I say Christ is king, everyone loses their minds. No, Joker. The sun has to rise in the morning. Where's the kidnapped sacrifice victims? Oh, we'll have to find out, Batman. Yeah, very funny, very amusing. But the sad fact is, it's a real product. Somebody spent cultural capital to make this. I, of course, support the aristocratic way, the enclave way, even the ghettoization way. The reason is without control over mainstream culture, there is no possibility of creating worthwhile art that isn't insulting to its to the people it hates, and indeed even to the people it loves. It cannot be tamed without cultural power, and by that I don't mean literally being a bestseller. Anyone can do that with just the right pieces put in the right places. The right pornography, perhaps, can become the bestseller. No, I am saying editorial power, consciously taken beyond some sort of moralistic standpoint, almost power for power's sake, when that art which is created relies upon institutions not a, not too far off from royal families, trading empires, and more. There is, of course, connections between different times and different places that we can look to for culture. And we find throughout history that it is culture has been in the hands of elite cadres until the invention of the magazine, we'll say. Uh, and I mean its production, the degenerates who write it, the creation of pieces that stand the test of time. Leonardo DiCaprio never worked for less than a multimillionaire or a duke, likely, or a cardinal. Uh, you imagine why I say this. Michelangelo, of course, worked for Rome itself. If you look back, certain people like Petrarch were in the court of kings, which is why their poetry has been saved over the years. You look at before then, the people who were working for Roman aristocrats. They were hired by men who controlled the lives of their family to its uttermost. Their slaves, even beyond death. Well, at least they believe so. Anthony, I've already begun. How are you doing?
Good. Sorry about that, but I'm here.
I am currently haranguing the masses. I hope you understand.
Yeah, you don't need to elaborate. I get it.
You're good. Anyway, to return to what I was talking about. This I I think I'm coming to some sort of crash out resolution to turn my nose up to you, the people. As please imagine me standing on top of a balcony, if you will. That would be nice. Thank you. Standing against you, the people, uh, to wonder what. Hold on, the thought is losing. It's like this. As much as I want to create art that people will love, that people I know will love, or I like will love, excuse me. I know, as in like people, on this thing, I've got to wonder whether it's just kind of, no longer, uh, hello, Bradford Walker, whether it's just no longer capable in this day and age. Uh, we can certainly create art and put it out there like it's uh, Galaxy's Edge or something like that, and that's good. That's good books. That's good writing. That's entertainment, true entertainment. But it only rarely hits the heights of art, and that's usually when Nicole just goes crazy uh, on the keyboard and gets his full energies out of it, like in Gods and Legionnaires, especially the Gods part. Control Alt Revolt and stuff like that, which is possibly one of the most important novels of our generation, but also completely undersold. Uh, Not because of quality, but because of its, shall we say, gimped production line. You should be reading Control Alt Revolt. Uh, the underneath these things, these books about AI taking over, I always find these underlinings of what we experience now, of a denigrated culture and a dead society, unable to think for itself or grow above its surroundings. Whether or not they have books doesn't matter. Whether or not they have the ability to create art doesn't matter. The fact is that by the time the AI starts rolling out in Armageddon, the people are unable to stop it or stop those in power from enabling it, which is always a damn shame. I want to get shiny and chrome, Anthony, fully chromed out, like Atom Smasher, like 99% chrome. You get me, Choom? Huh? 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 He's probably getting a drink. Uh,
You
with
literally said that actually as I was getting a drink.
I'm the best, Anthony. I'm the best. Hmm. No, I'm again thinking of in my sleep deprived state, even though I napped for basically 3 hours. Uh, I'm basically thinking about aristocracy and art again.
Let's see, aristocracy and art.
That there needs to be a certain aristocratic highness to art to reach that next level. Like there's a standard that was the air that men like Dickens and the guy who wrote the Three Musketeers and other serials like that.
Dumas, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Uh, Breathed, right? They, went to schools that would beat you if you used a comma wrong, and they were right to do so, Anthony. They were. I
Okay,
wish.
so this is an interesting point, and it's kind of hard to say. The problem is our standards are so much lower.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a weird problem, right? And the reason it's a weird problem is that if you look at Dickens in the context of his time, Dumas too, for that matter, um, they would not have been considered aristocratic art by any means.
Mm. So wait, hold on. I'm like looking up to the trash heap to like a billboard of suburbia. You know, not even a McMansion, just a one floor craftsman.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's like Blade Runner 2049. It's the meme, Anthony. I'm looking up at the suburban low middle class suburban household and looking down
Look,
because I'm
like, I don't know. The problem as I see it is like, I'm trying to think of how to put this. I'm struggling with the words. Like, how do you know you're at rock bottom almost? It's
right.
like, because if you were to ask people at the time, they would have said very similar to what you're saying now about Dickens, about Dumas. And
Dickens has been published. The West has fallen.
it reminds me of like, there's a movie called Ed Wood. Do you know it, Tim Burton?
I'm aware of it.
Yeah, decent movie. I like it. I know people who love Ed Wood, but there's something that Tim Burton said about like why he made the movie about Ed Wood that always stuck out to me and struck me as, I don't know if profound is the right word, but relatable is certainly the right word. He said the reason I find Ed Wood such like a compelling and interesting figure is that he didn't think his movies were bad when he made them. Like, he would have told you they were good. So how do I know that I didn't make a movie that was as bad as an Ed Wood movie? And it's like, like if you asked Ed Wood, he would tell you he didn't, but he was clearly wrong. Like, so I would say, well, I know that my movie's not as bad as Ed Wood, but Ed Wood knew his movies weren't as bad as Ed Wood. But they
Yeah, but Ed
were.
Wood was a delusional transvestite.
Yes, he was. He was delusional. He was literally delusional. Like, that's what transvestite is. Yeah. And he was highly, highly, highly incompetent. He was terrible. He had his good sides, and the movie does a pretty decent job of showing this. As far as I could tell, the good sides of Ed Wood were fairly accurate to the man in real life. Like, he really did develop a friendship with Bela Lugosi when basically the entire industry had abandoned him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is to his credit. Like, I don't mean this isn't a bash Ed Wood section, but I guess this is all to say, like, I don't know. It could always be. I'm trying to think of how to put this in a way that doesn't sound like cope, because I'm not saying this to mean like, oh, things aren't that bad, but it could always be worse. Like,
No.
we haven't hit rock bottom, and we never will. There's no such thing as rock bottom. There are just simply different and unique ways to be bad. Now, we've had this discussion. I was happy to have it confirmed by Dale Alquist when he came on the show, the Chesterton scholar. Chesterton's like scholarly reputation was salvaged, or not Chesterton, sorry, Dickens' scholarly reputation was salvaged by G.K. Chesterton. It's kind of interesting to see like what authors we remember versus don't remember, and like the vagaries of that. Chesterton is why we read Dickens in school.
Yes.
And yet we don't read Chesterton in school unless you're in like a specific Chesterton Academy. You know, there is a subset of the population that reveres Chesterton, as they should. At least as a scholar, like, and they should, but it's only a subset. Like, the general population, 95% of even the reading public just don't really know Chesterton, right?
Right.
And there's other things like this, right? Like, Edgar Allan Poe. Why did Edgar Allan Poe, despite the fact that he writes genre fiction, arguably the ultimate writer of genre fiction, because he invented like 3 different genres, or at the very least pioneer, maybe invented is codified, pioneered, right? 3 different genres: horror, science fiction, and the mystery, the detective story. By the way, I've had this argument even with John C. Wright. I will die on this hill. The father of the detective story was not Conan Doyle. It was Poe.
Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yes, and John's argument was that everybody models themselves off of Conan Doyle, not Poe. And my argument is that Conan Doyle modeled himself explicitly, openly, and clearly off of Poe, and Poe was already known. It was not like, oh, he brought this obscure thing to the mainstream. Poe wasn't obscure.
Mm-hmm.
it was already known. Detective fiction was a thing when Conan Doyle wrote it. He just was the first one who got it like really, really popular. But whatever. This is neither here nor there. The point being, like genre fiction is not respected in modern criticism, right? So why is Poe remembered? I have a theory, though I haven't proven this. It's because Poe was literally the literati. He was the critic class. He was an actual, like, highly respected critic. Therefore, he got a pass. Like, he could write whatever he wanted, and it was high art because he was a critic. So clearly he knew what he was talking about. Meanwhile, like, Flannery O'Connor is in this weird limbo state where people don't ignore her per se, but she's often not looked at on the same level because she wrote a variant of genre fiction, Southern Gothic, right? Like, it wasn't quite literary fiction, but it's also like enough like literary fiction that we could read her in schools, just as long as you recognize that she's just kind of weird. But if you actually read Flannery O'Connor's nonfiction writings, like she gave a few talks at universities and things, you realize Flannery O'Connor is like a hashtag our guy. Like, it's pretty funny. She'll like lament writing programs and how they ruin writers, and how like writing classes are like the worst thing that you could do. So that sort of rhetoric goes way back and was always correct.
Our chud, Flannery O'Connor.
By the way, writing classes are the most useless thing that you could take. In fact, they're worse than that. They're absolutely harmful. And you should avoid at all costs. We've had this discussion before, but my real hot take is that becoming an average writer is not really that hard. All you have to do is read a lot.
Yep.
That doesn't make you a great writer, but it means that you are going to be able to make something that someone somewhere will pick up and enjoy. Like, you'll be capable of doing that. This is why when I said like The Mandalorian, like season 1 of The Mandalorian is like, I don't know, a 7 of 10, a C-level show, which would have been fine if like all Star Wars was that level after the original trilogy, but that's not what we got, you know. Yeah, and it's also why like I'm absolutely convinced, as you are, that this is all willful. Like, it is not that hard to make good movies. Like, not great movies. I'm not saying like you're going to get classics and masterpieces all the time.
Right.
But like the MCU, for example, that was a series of solid 7 to 8 of 10 films. Very few were really great. There were maybe a couple, if you want to be generous, right, that were really, really great. But most of them were fine. Like, this isn't because like, oh, but what happened? Nothing happened. Nothing happened. It's the same. Like, they just decided that they didn't want to make good movies anymore. And this is on topic, by the way. But yeah, like, when you go into the vagaries of like what becomes, there's a really interesting thing. Like, I'm a huge fan of the Coen Brothers' True Grit, one of my all-time favorite movies. I love it. And I have read the original book. I've seen the 1960s movie. With John Wayne. I think the Coen Brothers version is actually the best version of the story, including the original book. But here's something interesting. I have a version of True Grit that has a foreword in it. And did you know that there was a period of time where True Grit was considered to be like in the running as one of the great American novels? Like, Maddie Ross in True Grit was like one of the great protagonists along with Huckleberry Finn. This was in like the 80s, 70s to 80s. Yeah.
Right.
When was it? Let me see. When was True Grit written? True Grit novel. 1968. There you go. Okay. Yeah, like 70s to 80s. According to the foreword to the book, there was a period of time where like True Grit was counted among the great American novels. Specifically because of Maddie Ross, that she was considered to be like such a strong and unique and compelling voice for good reason. She is like, and this is well and good and true. Maddie is a very compelling voice. I don't think that True Grit deserves necessarily that level of reputation, but it does go to reason like, okay, but then why isn't it? Well, because somewhere down the line, someone in the education system decided that it was a Western, and Westerns can't be the great American novel because they're genre fiction. Like, that's it. There's really no other reason for it. Like, it's not like something happened that made the book suddenly, like, critics go, oh, this is worse than we originally thought. No, the book was the same as it ever was. Same, what's that guy who, like, jiggles his head? Same as it ever was. I don't even know. I have no idea what that's from, by the way. But anyway, like, the book is all the book didn't change. Nothing changed. It's just that someone was like, no, we can't have a Western be the great American novel, which is insanity, right? Like, I remember vividly in AP US history, and I asked this question specifically to be a smart aleck because I knew the answer, right? But I was like, can I do the Lord of the Rings? And I go, how about on my AP English exam? How about the Silmarillion? No, they don't like that. And I'm like, that's nuts. The Silmarillion is like has way more depth, way more to say about human nature and just generally life than pretty much anything else we had read but like Shakespeare, right? Science fiction is another one. Like, in science fiction is only ever considered great if it's a dystopia.
Yep.
You like A Brave New World can be part of the canon. 1984 can be part of the canon. Does that even count as science fiction? I guess it does, right?
It technically does.
Yeah. But like nothing else can, And it's absurd and it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, there's no actual logical reason for this except that the powers that be were co-opted by postmodernism. So what do we need? And this goes back to what you were saying. Well, Brian Niemeyer, I know, thinks that we're actually already going back to this, a patronage model, right? Now, the thing is, though, there is a difference between this patronage model and the old one, because in the old patronage model, it used to be like, I'm writing this for the King of Florence or something. I just made something up. I don't even know what Florence had. But Duke. Anyway, what was that?
The Duke, the Doge, maybe.
The Doge or whatever, right? I'm writing this for the Doge of Florence. He commissioned me to write this novel. All right, fantastic. Nowadays, it's different because instead of saying I've been commissioned by the Doge to write this novel, it's more like you're going, hey, does anybody want me to write this novel? If you do, throw a couple bucks my way. So you're being commissioned by the crowd, the people.
To you, the people.
What does that mean exactly? To be honest, I don't really know. I know that the thing about the pulp revolution that's like so interesting is that, again, the pulp era is clearly better than our era, right? Like, very, very clearly. But should we be shooting to go back to that level, or should we be shooting for like kind of what you're saying here, right? Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Tolkien. Like, to be honest, when you think of like the great English novel, the great novels written in English, can you think of any but Tolkien?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, on that level, I'm not sure. I mean, Brideshead Revisited, I guess, is kind of it can be close-ish.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe
Austen, maybe Jane Austen.
I mean, that's who I thought of. There's also not like
It's harder than you think because you go to a lot of foreign writers pretty quickly without realizing it.
Does Scotland count as a foreign writer? I guess so.
Not if you write in English. My point is it needs to be written in English.
Okay, so like...
And even then, when you think of like great novels written in English, it kind of dries up once you hit the 20th century. And then in the 20th century, it's like, what, Tolkien and no one? Again, Brideshead Revisited, maybe?
I don't even know that one.
What?
Yeah.
How do you not know Brideshead Revisited?
I've heard the name. I don't know anything about it.
It's one of the great Catholic novels, and before you say anything, so is Lord of the Rings. So that doesn't mean you won't like it.
Anyway, so like, hold on. This is a good point for a second. Novels in English as good as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, in the 20th century, you get really very few of writers of that caliber, right? Like
Right.
Evelyn Woe, who is the Brideshead Revisited guy. Graham Greene, maybe. Graham Greene, I know. That's the writer of Brighton Rock, and he also has. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Is it The Power and the Glory? I don't think so.
Hmm.
It's a story. He has a few different books. Uh, Let me think. Yeah, in the 20th century, it's really a wasteland. People will say Cormac McCarthy, but they're wrong. Um,
Really?
I'm
Now
going to push
that is
back.
a hot take.
It is a bit of a hot take, I will admit. Okay, so let me be a little bit more fair here, right?
Right.
Little more fair. Um, so Cormac McCarthy is a great writer.
Hmm.
However, his philosophy is so dead. I
Pardon
don't
me.
think his books really lead anywhere. Like, I'm trying to think of how to put this. If you read Cormac McCarthy, and I've tried to a few times, and I know his story, like, you know, I watched Wendigoon's 5-hour video on Blood Meridian. What are you getting out of it? What's the message? And the answer is like everything sucks. We're all doomed. We're going to die. You know, it's like I know people go like, "Oh, well, what about the road?" It's like, "Yeah, oh well, I mean, I guess the road kind of." Do I think Cormac McCarthy is on the level of Tolkien? No. Tolkien is much, much, much wiser than McCarthy. I mean, people will sometimes say like 20th century writers on the level of Tolkien. Flannery O'Connor maybe could have been if she lived longer. Um, Certainly, she is one of the great short story writers in the English language. Arguably the greatest short story writer in the English language. But you know, I love everybody loves Princess of Mars. Crap, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Yeah, everybody loves Edgar Rice Burroughs. Edgar Rice Burroughs is a great writer. He's not Tolkien. Robert Howard is a great writer. He's not Tolkien. And I've had this conversation with the Pulp Rev guys, and I'm going to like dissent from some of them, though not all of them, because I think the honest ones do know this. Tolkien is as good as everybody says he is. Arguably better than some. You know, like his reputation is completely deserved. And there's really like none of the pulp writers are on the level of Tolkien. I would include Robert E. Howard in that. Robert E. Howard is arguably a better prose writer than Tolkien, maybe at times. Certainly he is not his equal in depth of world building, depth of philosophy, in telling a long form story, right? Same with Edgar Rice Burroughs. I don't really think is Tolkien's equal in anything, to be honest with you. I think he's good, and I don't think that really means much. Like, not as good a writer as Tolkien is almost a worthless phrase. People will say Gene Wolfe, but to be frank, Gene Wolfe is too esoteric. He was never going to be one of the great, like, capital G great writers for that reason. Simply not accessible enough by the masses in a way that Tolkien absolutely was. Yeah, I would say, thinking over it, of the 20th century, the one writer who had the chance to equal Tolkien because of her insight into human nature was Flannery O'Connor. And she died after having written only 2 novels, and with her short stories being her real legacy. And I think she's the greatest short story writer in English. I don't know, man. I don't think it's blasphemy to say Edgar Rice Burroughs is not as good of a writer as J.R.R. Tolkien. I just don't. I don't even think it's that hot of a take.
I mean, fair enough.
Mr. Shepard. I don't even think it's that hot of a take. I also don't think it's a particular insult either. Like, again, I don't really think it means anything. I don't think. I think basically no one is as good of a writer as Tolkien. I don't think Lewis is as good of a writer as Tolkien. And Lewis is arguably my personal. I would say he's my personal favorite author. He's the author I've gotten the most out of, right? But did he create a work on the level of the Lord of the Rings? I would argue no.
Oh,
G.K. Chesterton, did he ever create a work on the level of the Lord of the Rings? He might be a better nonfiction writer. In fact, he definitely is, to be fair. But when we're talking fiction, I don't think he ever created a work on the level of the Lord of the Rings. Yeah. When you go through the history of the English novel, you get Austen. You get what's the other one from that era, the Gothic novel, Wuthering Heights, the Bronte siblings. That's who I'm thinking of.
yes.
Uh,
Honestly, you know what? Look, I'm tired of it. We're there's very little that approaches Tolkien. There's very little that stands on that pinnacle. In English, in French, you have things like the Three Musketeers, others, Dumas in general, the Count of
well,
Monte
in other
Cristo,
languages,
certainly.
I would say the Russians have the claim to be Tolkien's equal or arguably better. Like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, right?
Sure.
Maybe I don't. I wouldn't actually. I think the Three Musketeers is a great book. I love it, but I would argue it does not have the depth of Tolkien's masterpiece.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I think Count of Monte Cristo certainly has an attempt at that depth
you could,
in a
yeah,
French way.
that's
Uh,
fair. Yes.
like he, but like I think we've lost track, of what we're uh
Well, so
talking about.
yeah, the point I'm
Like
trying to
there's
make is
yeah,
that we are in a different era. Like even Tolkien was a man out of time, is kind of the point I was going to make. There was basically no equal in English in his generation. Um, and now who's the next Tolkien? There isn't one, right? Like
there isn't one.
John, the closest I could think of, there are people who I think can reach the level of transcendent. I could think of two right now, especially with
Right.
Gene Wolfe dead. Um, Gene Wolfe was able to at times, but the two living right now who are capable of it are John C. Wright and Nick Cole. And to be frank, and with apologies to my good friend John C. Wright, I think that both of them kind of have made the same error of not really trying to.
Yep.
And I think like for largely the same reasons and not blameworthy reasons. It's not like they did anything wrong, nor do they have any obligation to. They could write whatever they want for whatever reason they want. With that said, I would rather John be writing more Awake in the Nightlands and Iron Chamber of Memories than more of his Star Wars pastiche, as good as it is. It's
Yes.
always going to be limited by the fact that it's a Star Wars pastiche. Nicole is literally the exact same thing, right? Like, it's also even a Star Wars pastiche. So, however, I think both of them are capable of transcendence, but I don't even think either of them, like, as was pointed out, Tolkien was a premier mythology professor and a linguist. He was like the exact sort of person who could write The Lord of the Rings, right? Like, I don't think we have. I don't think that sort of person exists today. And part of it is like you look at the state of modern schooling, and this is not me bragging about myself because I'm in the same boat. Like people used to learn Greek and Latin in schools; they could read the Iliad and the Bible, and and Hebrew
Yeah.
even, right? Like in their original languages, and it was a thing you would just do. Now there are such a thing as classical schools. But even then, they're like poor imitations. They aren't even trying to do the same things. People just kind of assume. And Megabuster Shepherd says, yes, but it's fun. Sometimes fun outweighs the artistic. I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. I
Hold
think
on.
you can make something fun and artistic.
Yeah. But also it's we're trying for a certain quality, but not like quality, like it's if you look at something like some of the better Star Wars novels, very high quality writing. Timothy Zahn at his best, but at
Yeah,
the same time, it's maybe a B tier at the like B minus tier, so to say. These things are fun. These things have good writing, good character work. Luke thinking about indwelling about Luke thinking about how he's using the Force too much, so he does things with his bare hands, rather than rely on the Force for every little thing that he does. All these things have interesting markers to them, even statements, but it doesn't create a larger statement that can make everyone go, wow. That the original point of it is less to create something infinitely consumable. Oh yes, this is the latest rage. It's a girl having to choose between, get this, two werewolves. But where's the vampire? Her editor yells. No, it's just two werewolves. Oh, you're transgressing sacred ground, Missy.
Amazing.
Hold on, editor. One of them is transsexual. We have transsexual werewolves now. Who wins? The male one who stays male.
Yeah. And here's the thing, it's like, I'm not telling John not to write his books that he wants to write if he feels compelled to write it. He absolutely could and should. And same with Nick
Yeah.
Cole. It's just like it's hard to explain because it sounds like I'm blaming them, and I don't, and I'm really not, or I'm not trying to. If it's
Right.
at the very least, right? Like they absolutely like those books are worthy of existing, and Megabuster Shepherd is right about one thing. Sometimes you just want a fun read, and that's perfectly fine as well. However,
Right.
I do think that it's more that I see like a lack in the market of people who are able or even trying to create more, right?
Right.
Than just that. And that's one of the things with like the pulp. My one real reservation, this is over years of going back and forth with them, and I've kind of like codified it. My one real reservation with the pulp revolution is kind of that. It's like we have to go back, but we have to go back to the pulp era. No, I don't like. You don't have to. And the reason that I'm picking on John and Nick for going like, and they're just making these Star Wars novels, like, it's not because John and Nick are doing anything wrong. It's because I know that those are the two writers who are capable of transcendent work in our side of the aisle. Like, because both of them have done it. Awaken the Nightland is a masterpiece, and I think that there is a non-zero chance that we're going to see something with an Awaken, like, 100 years from now, some Awaken the Nightland reaches some sort of canon status. I say a non-zero chance. I don't think it's likely, but I think that the quality is there. It could, anybody who can make Awaken the Nightland like is a master. And that's the thing when you go like, oh, sometimes you just want fun. Awaken the Nightland is science fiction. John wrote a whole essay arguing for it as science fiction.
I find it very fun. But
yeah, it's a blast.
But it's like we're not like there's fun and then there's fun. Like there's Fenton Woods, Pirates of the Electromagnetic Waves, and it's a lot of fun. But if you reread it, you're actually receiving a lot of tutorials about how electromagnetic radio sciences work, how to bounce things off the atmosphere, how to set up, your power, and how to do things in a storm, in this situation, in that situation. Like people read Dostoevsky, for fun, but they also read it because there was a belief that there was a serious benefit to hard reading. Like I'm thinking back to recently I did the Sea of Fertility quadrilogy by Mishima with a small ad hoc men's reading group, basically. There were, quite frankly, most of them didn't speak, and I don't even think most of them read, but they were there, and the memes were hot. But it was, after I read it, I suddenly have new ideas about, decline of a personality over time. Through the friend. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten their names already. I need to start doing like memory games or something to get my memory up and running so I can just quote these off the top of my head. Um, the friend who follows the different incarnations of Kiyoyaki, uh, he degrades as much as uh, uh, his friend degrades over the incarnations. He actually burns most brightly, in the second incarnation, where he is a military patriot for Japan and assassinates a disrespectful, sacrilegious Ogliarch. Murders him, for Japan, for the spirit of Japan. And in the third one, he's a woman. And for the fourth one, he's an empty man, a shell of whatever there is. And there's almost nothing recognizable to Yukio Oyaki besides his beauty, his physical appearance, everything being used up. And as Honda, I remember him now, ages, he, himself, he degrades. But then he goes back and meets Kiyoyaki's lover, who became a member of a certain temple after being forced to have an abortion to save the family honor. This was, of course, like 1901 Japan. And then this is, 1910-ish Japan, I mean. And then this is like 1980s Japan. So there's like a 70-year jump. Uh, and so he meets her, and she just goes, "Did I really know Kiyoyaki? Did these things really happen?" Experiencing something like that through 4 books, a real investment in time, changes a certain amount of outlook. There's an understanding of what the author was trying to say. That what the author was inspired to say. You know, Mishima, one of his great themes is a person being degraded through the changes that they're making in their lives and in the sort of experiences that they're having. In The Sailor Who Fell from Grace from the Sea, he is murdered by some psychopathic kids after he decides that he's no longer going to become a sailor. He's murdered by the son of his lover. His wife, actually. I think, man, did they get married? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. He's murdered, by by his adopted son, kind of, and his friends. Um, I just described the Sea of Fertility quadrilogy when the main boy character of uh, uh, Sailor Who Fell from Grace of the Sea is being a peeping Tom, which is a theme that shows up quite a bit in Mishima's work. There's a certain intellectual. It's always associated with intellectualism. Honda is also a peeping Tom. There's a separation of themselves from the life that they want and the life that they crave, the actions, usually sexual, that they are lusting after, or at the very least are fascinated by, because goodness gracious me, I'm not going to get into The Sailor Who Fell from Grace in the Sea. That is a can of worms. So it's like you read it and you have these ideas going through your head. Is something like being a peeping Tom an overall intellectualization of the person and his relations to sexual behavior? Is something like uh, misfortune following somebody who's making changes in their lives because they've fallen apart from their golden path? Does that, how does that affect them? How did it affect Mishima? Did he, from reading Sun and Steel, it's very clear that he viewed himself as having to actively fight for a path versus passively being on the path. So you read these novels, right? These high class, quite frankly, not fun novels, and you start to wonder about it. Like a good novel, which isn't fun, will suck you into it naturally. Like Beowulf sounds fun, but in actuality, there are parts of it that are just like, and this is the hall, and this, and you're just kind of watching some people brag, which is kind of cool, but like, I'm kind of here for the monster, aren't I? Like it's, or you look at things like the Wizard of Oz. Is it fun because of the fantastic happenings and the characters within it doing it, or is there a real question of fakery and real quote unquote realism? Is there a morality to Oz that is actually permeated throughout the dealings of the people there? How bad is the Wizard of Oz if he really just cares for his people and is just a bit of a shyster about it? He's a flim flam man, but he genuinely cares for the state of Oz. If given a choice, he'll always choose the one that helps the people. Which is why, even though he couldn't defy the Wicked Witch of the West, or is it East? I forget. He does send Dorothy after her. It's like looking through my library. There's Pride and Prejudice. I've got the Castalia House version of it. It's a very beautiful piece. What draws you in isn't some sort of like action packed thing. It's the clever wittiness of the different characters, of Mr. Bennett's dry wit, but also the tragedy of his character, where he won't actually get into the lives of his younger daughters because he's, kind of wrapped up with his older daughters. Not that, in a bad way, but he's a bit neglectful. If he hadn't, been neglectful, Lydia might not have been with the evil Mr. Wickham. Um, if you look at things like Dante's Inferno, yes, the poetry is beautiful. It draws you in, but he says more than the fun words and the beautiful lines. There's in the pulp rev space, like with some things like Skylar Hernstrom is probably the only one who truly hits the heights of Robert E. Howard. Like Robert E. Howard at his best and Skylar Hernstrom at his best are about the same. But then that's people we like, right? Let's look at people that we shouldn't really like China Miéville. The City and the City is one of the great works of English language. Not a Lord of the Rings, but it is a fantastic piece, and it has a fantastic premise. There's clearly two cities labeled on top of each other, and it is almost death, a kind of death, in fact, to acknowledge one or the other, except in direst emergency, like a car accident. I'm saying that there's a benefit to reading these things, beyond fun, that you experience stranger ideas and emotions. It grows your mind. You are introduced to concepts that you may not have thought of or heard of before. That and I'm not saying this in a cuck liberal kind of way, but concepts that can grow your mind and your consciousness of, I don't want to say consciousness, grow your mind's fine. That'll grow your mind to sort of different mind forms. Like it's hard to not, I don't like how cucked it sounds. Like I'm being redded about this. Open your mind. Open your mind. But it's like you read something and you are necessarily opening your mind. I think, I don't know whether you saw this Twitter post, Mega Bustard, but not that I want to call you out. I feel like I'm calling you out. I'm sorry. I should. You are a good poster and a friend, and I'm being a little too much. But I made a post about Britain banning porn, which is more than Britain banning porn. It's forcing people to be no longer anonymous on the internet. It's actually a death to English freedom. uh, you know, but I don't want to talk about it. But people are always wanting to say that they have a soul, right? But they don't like the consequences that comes with the soul. The fact of the matter is, if myself and other writers that I've read didn't have porn habits, not that I'm doing quite well right now, to be clear. Uh, I know that certain paths would not have been as open to me as they are now, like body horror. Like it's you consume the filth. It affects your soul, and you spew out the filth. The same way with things like women writing romance novels. Guess what? They're all gooners. They're all horrific gooners. Like, me on my worst day is nothing like one of these femme wannabe, smut merchants. I was standing at the door at the place I work as a bouncer, and this absolutely gorgeous Adonis was talking to one of the younger server girls, uh, and she openly lusted after him. Frustrated. She wanted his number. She's underage. Absolutely not. If he had even touched her, I would have stepped in between for it, and she would have been incensed at me. But he didn't. He was very polite to her, and so on and so forth. Uh, and then I made a joke that she needs to hold out for a cattle baron because she looks the very picture of a cattle baron's ruthless yet beautiful wife. I think that would be very funny. It's like, well, gosh, I'm really sorry that you're angry at my hubby for that. And then she hands them poison lemonade. You must be parched, sugar. And then they fall over dead. It amused me while I was sleep deprived because I also had a million other things going on at that time. But it's like, what is she consuming? She's clearly gone off the reservation. Do I need to keep a bucket for all these and just splash women at Barnes and Noble, who are looking at the romantasy side. Taylor Lautner, as a werewolf once again. It's I say aristocratic, but quite frankly, I don't know what I mean. I just know that there's a problem, that there's something there, and I'm looking for something that'll hit more than just some sort of fancy word. The West house landed on the Eastern Witch. That's right.
Yeah, so I guess, like, first of all, it's pretty funny that you're like, yeah, I said aristocratic, but I don't even know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about. There's no bloodlines. We don't have bloodlines. Like,
no,
it's
but
it's like,
I know what you, so
hold on.
okay,
So there was
go
a
ahead.
very funny thing. So there's that meme where it's like, share a piece of X lore about yourself. And then the current head of the house, Habsburgs, or in that running, goes shares a post that goes, share a bit of medieval lore about yourself. And he's just going, very funny, very amusing, excellent shit post.
Oh, Edward Hatchberg is actually a pretty good shit poster.
Yes.
Which is like one of the most bizarre things that you can even think of saying. But anyway, can you imagine explaining this to somebody in the Middle Ages?
So you
Yeah,
have
Edward.
a
Yeah, the current scion of the House of Habsburg is a great Twitter shit poster, and then they're going, "I'm sorry, what?" No, but yeah, going to what you were saying, like, well, here's the thing. It sounds like I'm going like, so where are, like, am I going to create the next Lord of the Rings? No, I'm absolutely not. We don't need that, nor do we. I guess what I'm looking for is, like, I want to see people try to make something where their motivation isn't like, I just want to do something fun, right?
right.
I guess that's really what I'm saying. Like, The Eighth Arrow is a great example by Father Weta. Love The Eighth Arrow. Super fun, super funny.
Great book.
Great book. Here's the thing, though. Like, even though it's not the Lord of the Rings, nor is it trying to be the Lord of the Rings, nor is it like one of the great novels, it does have something to say.
Yes.
Like, it does have something interesting to say about redemption, about the difference between pagan cultures and Christian cultures, pagan heroes and Christian heroes,
Yep.
on forgiveness, on all of these different things, right? Like, on hell specifically, like the fact that he had the great reveal at the end that he the way he structured it was so clever that where like Satan is the Lord of Hell, and then it's like a reveal, like, wait a minute, Satan's just lying. Satan's another prisoner. Where if you read the Divine Comedy, it's like, yeah, that's like kind of the point of the book or the poem, honestly, right? Like of the
Yep.
Inferno section is that Satan is another prisoner. The way that he structures this as a reveal in the Eighth Arrow is extremely clever. It's a great idea for like an end of story twist.
Yep.
So all of this is to say, like, that's the Eighth Arrow would be at home in the pulp revolution. That's like the sort of level that they were making in like pulp, right?
Yes.
And sure, on that sense, yes, I could get behind like what the pulp rev guys are doing. I guess like what I'm really looking for though is I don't want people to do things like, I just want to make something fun, right? And again, to be fair to John and to Nick, John's not doing this. Like, I have no doubt that by the time that this new Star Wars series of John's is over, he's going to have something profound to say. Because John always has something profound to say. He's a profound thinker. Nicole, I don't know enough of. Like, some of the stuff I've read, I found to be unbelievably profound. His Wasteland saga, specifically. Also, his zombie book had an incredibly moving ending and had some really, really interesting things to say in the middle of it about, modern life and relationships. What was not and even like, that's the thing with like these sorts of writers though. Like Nick Cole wrote a book called Dark Knight that was a zombie book, but different than the one that I was thinking of. He has like two different unrelated zombie books, which is really funny. Like they're not in the same shared universe, which is kind of funny. But this one was in a series. In fact, I think it was in a massive shared series that was like with multiple authors. That was like a post-apocalypse. And the second book in the series was called Dark Knight. And it was about like a retarded child. It was from the point like that was the protagonist who had to survive in a zombie outbreak and like make it to a safe house, and his father dies. And like, I found that book, that's as pulp as it could get, right? Like it is so pulpy in a pulpy series, not trying to be high art. I found it to be incredibly moving, like, and it really, really profound at times. Like, I brought it up a few times, but it's worth talking about. Like, there's the scene at the end of that book where the soldier who was tasked to defend the library from like the hordes that are coming realizes that if he stays at his post at the library, that the retarded child will die. And then he has this realization that like, if he lets this child die, then there's nothing about human knowledge worth preserving anyway. Like, that if he loses his humanity that much, then what about humanity is worth preserving? And this was like, I remember this moment like really hit me. Like it was a really moving and profound moment portrayed in this very pulpy sci-fi zombie apocalypse novel. So yes, more stuff like this. I guess like I don't like the attitude that you do sometimes see on the right of like, my goal is to make money. Really? That's your goal? Then you're worthless. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you make money, to be frank. You care, and you should care, and you should try and make money. And in fact, I think it's very important that you try and make money. You are worth something. This is why I do not submit, even if it's only a token fee. I do not submit to magazines that don't pay because my work is worth money. I put work into this. I deserve to be paid for my work. If you're not paying me for my work, you're saying that you don't think it has value. And that's not true. But there's like two extremes here. The other extreme is like, I just want to see dollar signs go up. I just want to see bank account number go up. That's it? That's all you're doing this for? Like, then why am I supporting you? I don't give a shit if your bank account goes higher. Like, I don't care if you get richer. I care that you've produced something good. Like, I wrote After Camelot recently. After Camelot's not trying to be Tolkien. I could never do Tolkien. I don't have the education. I don't have the ability. In this lifetime, I'm not going to be capable of being J.R.R. Tolkien unless I suppose, like, I won't never say never. If I actively dedicated my life to it from this point forward, maybe, which
Well,
I'm not
it's
going to do.
it's about divine inspiration as much as anything else. Like it's
There's that
and
too. The other thing is that Tolkien was blessed with an absolutely extraordinary level of self knowledge, which we mentioned in the discussion with John last time, like in Leaf by Nickel. Um, like, I'm trying to think of how to put it. Tolkien knew himself like better than most people, and like with more honesty and more he viewed himself with more honesty than most people are capable of as a very young man. And that's just like that's divine inspiration, right? Like that's a level of ordained foreknowledge, so to speak. Because Leaf by Niggle serves as, this is why it's one of the greatest short stories of the 20th century. Leaf by Niggle serves as like an eerily accurate prediction of Tolkien's entire career.
yeah,
Like, to the point where it's honestly kind of creepy when read in that context. Like, he got it so right that you would assume this was the work of an old man, and it wasn't. It was the work of him when he was like in the trenches or like recovering, from trench fever. Uh, and he just like he knew himself so well. He had this level of self-knowledge about his own weaknesses and strengths that he was able to accurately predict his entire life, at least insofar as it came to his heart, uh,
yes,
which is insane. I can't do that. Like, I wouldn't even try.
yeah,
Um, so that you're right. There's a level of divine inspiration too. I'm not going to make the Lord of the Rings. I'm not even going to try. And that's the other thing about Tolkien too, and why with like the great masters, they say that Ted Williams who was a terrible teacher of baseball. For all of you non-sports fans, he's considered by many to be the greatest hitter of all time. They say that he was a terrible teacher of hitting. Supposedly, he was a
yeah,
coach for years, so I don't know if this is really true or if it's just a tall tale. But the idea stands, right? Like, sometimes if you are a gifted genius, you don't really, it's not really possible to get this to someone else, right? Like,
right,
to impart this knowledge to someone else, because you can't have the hand-eye coordination of Ted Williams, right? Sure, there are things you could do to improve. This is why Tom Simon's Writing Down the Dragon is by far the best how to write like Tolkien books. It's really not like, you can't recreate Lord of the Rings. With that said, it's a folly to say there's nothing you can learn from Tolkien. There are things you can learn and take into your own writing. But at the same time, there are certain things where you're like, should you do this? No, you're not Tolkien. You're going to fail. It's not going to work. This comes from, like, you see it a lot with the pulp rev guys in the modern day, like, no world building, right? Like, world building is bad. It is for you, probably, right?
right,
Um, it wasn't for Tolkien, actually,
yeah.
because Tolkien is not you. Um,
Like
and
the
it really,
average,
go ahead.
the average writer rarely knows what their story needs. Like the like, could you name me Tolkien's editor?
Uh, Not off the top of my head.
Right. There's a reason for that. That's because the genius is well known to be within it. But quite frankly, even if it's a bit of infamy, we all know Scalzi's editor, Patrick Nielsen Hayden, Niels Hayden, or whatever his name is pronounced. I don't respect him enough to care to remember it. Um, it's there's a reason for that. Scalzi needed an editor. Scalzi needed his inside man. Like the needed someone else who may have had a stronger spark of brilliance, maybe than he did, to really bring out anything valuable from his work. There are famous editors. There's a reason why people remember John Campbell, and it's not because Moorcock and others rebelled against him, though that's the famous story. He was the famous editor. Hugo was the famous editor, publisher of the magazine and all this jazz. There were times when people needed their somebody with a bigger vision, or at least the ability to subsume someone else's vision to bring out the best in them. There were maybe if we were 50 years earlier, or even 70 years earlier, 1950s, maybe we could have thought of a famous editor of the Strand or some other thing that published Dickens. um but that culture is so far gone from ours. There's no point in learning that. uh
Mm.
I'd say the benefit of an aristocratic setup, quote unquote, of a patronage network, is of course the ability to uh, allow the divine spark to inculcate. Petrarch, surely in the various royal courts that he was in, I think he was in one of the anti-popes royal courts. Certainly spent his time studying, Roman writs that they had, and poetry, and other things like that, writing his own in correspondences with other people. Uh, but also, he could be asked at any time by the king, hey, you're my poet laureate, by the pope, anti-pope in this case. I want you to spout some poetry to me, and he would, be able to quote something, some of his own work, bring forth some paperwork. Bard culture was pretty gone by that point, I guess. Uh, or at least it doesn't come up the same way as it did before. Um, so it's like, how do I want to put it? The evolution of culture fundamentally changed how it went, and as higher culture developed, um, higher forms of it were also developed, because the tastes became much more refined. I was thinking about someone, I think it was Bronze Age Pervert, pointed out that you can't really have elegance, like as in a refined style, in a multicultural society. The Venetians are very famous for their masks. They used to wear them, like eyes wide shut masks, of all things. They used to wear them in their common dealings on the street. They were a fairly insular culture, and they weren't, no one cracked them open like Napoleon did, yet. There were swamps and everything protecting them. Even when they were trying to create their own kingdom and whatnot, they still had monoculture that they rallied around, so that they would wear masks and had certain ways of talking and ways of politeness, and schemes within schemes. Like, it didn't come from nowhere. It's not the creation of novels, the Venetian schemer. It's actually the creation. It's from real life, what they did and what they were doing. Their government was so complex that no one man could take power, no one family, but they tried to do it anyway. And they had to do it in subtle ways, because otherwise a coalition may rise up against them. It creates a certain way to live that creates elegance. You have to look the right way, or people within this insular town will think poorly of you. I barely consider what shirt I wear. If I may consider not to wear one of the holy shirts if I'm going to meet people that I vaguely care about. I haven't worn a button down shirt in years, practically. You know, it's who am I impressing? Some Indian dude, some DoorDash? No, I don't care what they think. They're dogs. Their opinion is built on envy and resentment. Oh, but what about a Chinese person? Oh, I don't care about that either. They look down on me anyway because I didn't roll up in a fancy car. Like, who are you impressing in your monoculture? Without your monoculture, a foreigner, a person who isn't your blood. If I had a delicate society, I'd go to church in a proper suit, instead of a polo and dubiously clean pants. Uh, I would have different life situations that would allow me to rise early and properly groom myself. Rather than having to do this and do that. Because not that I was in the running for these jobs, but because there's the problem with the job market that we have today, that depresses all wages. Um, it's you like you look at these things and you see that there's because there's a loss of monoculture, an American idea. Actually, there's also a decline in writing, in arts. And I don't mean modern art. I mean in the sense of what are they saying, what are they bringing forward. It almost gets to the point where Andy Warhol taking multivaried colored pictures, and I've actually grown to appreciate Andy Warhol as I've gotten older. Um, Taking multicolored pictures of your dog for 25,000 1970s $25,000 a pop. It's almost more honest, than having to, go online and wonder whether some Indian AI bot is going to ransom a review from you or something ridiculous like that. Recently, The Killing Floor 3 came out, and people are saying that the good reviews are all just AI because the game is unfinished and terrible. Uh, they just said write a good review for The Killing Floor 3. Okay, its battle pass system is fair. No human hands ever wrote that. you know, I on X, I'm sure you've seen this too, X friends. People are calling for the ability to ban people from different countries. Well, what they mean is cultures. From seeing your posts. If I could ban myself from seeing any post from the hands of a curry slopping Indian, I think I would have a good time. All these fake accounts, who will eventually say, yeah, the space is so cool, but have you thought about what the British did to India? Yeah, it was pretty cool, kid. Hope you got enough engagement to marry, your darling Vegeta. I'm sure she's very beautiful to you. The, these things, like having to touch another culture, reach out, dig into its mind, its art, fills you with disgust if it's not noble. Why is it that we know more and more about Japanese culture, but we seem to enjoy it more? But when we dived, sucked our hand into the minds of the Chinese and the Indians, we hated them. We spit on them. We see the flash of resentment in their eyes, and we we laugh at them for being so much smaller. A nation, a billion gammas in a swarm. Oh, maybe I'm going off topic a little bit, but am I to market to these people when I begin working on what I hope will be the masterpiece to make me a master? Do I have to worry about what Mr. Rajesh in Hyderabad thinks about this? No, of course not. Quite frankly, and I am doing this show, I clearly care about you. But what am I to do? If as long as the quality's high, I can't think of what you want. What do you want, sir? What do you want? I want Star Wars, sir. I want Star Wars. Yes. And are you buying John C. Wright's new book? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am. Very, very good. You know, it's there's a certain, like, I see Isaac Arthur. Isaac Young going, oh, the people are saying you shouldn't be writing for money again. You should be paid, but you're never going to get rich as a writer. The ship sailed. You're not going to sell your soul, and if you do, are you going to sell it for 1.5 billion like the Southport guys did? Implying that Donald Trump and Saddam Hussein in a homosexual relationship with the devil, Butters and Cartman trying to kill themselves with a Tesla. Yes, the exhaust of a Tesla. Yes, this is high art. Jesus showing up. Oh, guys, just play along. Play along, guys. Okay, just play along. Yes, absolutely. I hope that 1.5 billion was worth it. It's
Yeah.
yeah, like and I'm sure people had that reaction, when the Irish and the Italians came over. But the Irish can read English, and the Italians are cultured. It's I you know yeah, like I've said it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like part of this is I'm trying to think of how to put this. Like what I'm looking for isn't necessarily like sure the next masterpiece, but like I said, as far as I'm aware of living writers with Gene Wolfe dead, there's only two people who could do it, and the two are John C. Wright and Nick Cole. And Bradford Walker says there's no money in the books, there's money in the IP, and the first to be able to keep control of their IP as they play the adaptation game will blaze the trail for the rest. Not for the right, there isn't.
No.
Sorry, this is not true, as Larry Correa could tell you. Larry Correa is very successful. He is, in fact, a successful writer who makes money off his books. So where's the Monster Hunter show? Like, where is it? It's a great, like, people love that sort of thing. It's like perfectly tailor-made for a show. It has a built-in audience. This would be a guaranteed moneymaker. I would watch it.
Yep.
Where is it?
A series of movies.
Yeah. So no, I don't agree. They say that Lawhead's Pendragon Cycle is getting made by the Daily Wire, but to be frank, the fact that it's being made by the Daily Wire makes me think it will probably be bad. Even though I hope I'm wrong, I really do. I love the Pendragon Cycle, but I don't think I will be because the Daily Wire stuff is absolute garbage. Lady Baller sucked. Hit Run Hide Fight or whatever the hell it was called was awful. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be wrong and this is their first masterpiece, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Larry won't go outside the West. The right has to do that to win. This reminds me of the scene in That Hideous Strength where Merlin's like, we got to call on the pagans in the East. No, anime, like if you mean anime is going to die. Anime is dying, right?
Yeah.
Like I mentioned this on the forum, and this is a bit of a tangent, but it is important because he brought it up, and it's like, what's going on with anime? Let's say you get like 5. They mentioned this, like, oh, this last anime season might have been the best ever. And indeed, there were probably like, maybe that's true. I don't know. I haven't really been following closely. I always like to preface this by, or like to clarify what I say here when I go like, the reason that I am not watching anime is not because I have any moral issue with it. I do not and would watch it. I just don't really have time. Like, to be clear, like I am not saying like, oh yeah. Anyway, the point being, when it comes to anime, what people don't realize is that let's say you get 5 really good anime in a season. That sounds awesome. That means you're getting 20 good anime a year, even, right? Doesn't that sound like if that happened in the West, we would be right to go like, wow, I guess we're in like fantastic shape right now. This is what people don't realize. There is a ludicrous deluge of content with anime. Like, it's actually insane how much sludge is coming out of anime. To say that there are 5 good shows a season, I think I did the math on this a while ago. It was something like, less than 1% of all shows are worth watching. like something insane like that. Percentage wise, the only reason they look like they're doing better is because by sheer numbers, eventually something every now and then is hitting that people like Free Run or something. And even then, like, when's the last time there's been like a Cowboy Bebop, a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, even I don't know, like an Evangelion, to be honest with you, Gurren Lagann, been a while.
Yep.
BNA isn't on that level. I love My Hero Academia. It's no Brotherhood. The Chainsaw Man anime was weird. There was like, everybody loved it when it originally came out. Then for some reason, everybody turned on it for like, as far as I could tell, no reason. But it simply didn't have the cultural impact that like Full Metal Alchemist did. It just didn't. I don't know how else to describe it to be like, yeah, I love Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man Part 1 is a masterpiece. The anime was really good, but it also, like, it didn't rewrite the rules of anime in the way that Evangelion and Cowboy Bebop and
Kill la Kill,
and even Kill la Kill to a lesser extent. Yes, right. I would agree. All of these things did. So, Demon Slayer, to be honest, Demon Slayer is overrated. It's always been overrated. I don't hate Demon Slayer. I do enjoy it. But it absolutely does not deserve its popularity. Like, not even close. It's like a C tier shonen.
B tier. Come on.
No, I'm being a little mean. Yeah. I'll bump it up to B.
Yeah, like it's like
better than Avatar. If we put Avatar as like the dead average shonen, and I mean Last Airbender. If you put, which we were discussing on Twitter the other day, like if you put Avatar as like the dead average shonen, which it absolutely is, by the way, Avatar isn't that great. I would say Demon Slayer is solidly in the better than Avatar range, but like not by a lot, Avatar was, but by the way, this is my real hot take. The original Avatar, The Last Airbender, was an okay show at best. It was a solid C+ tier shonen, nothing more. The big flaw of the show was that the main characters did not act like they were from a foreign culture. They acted like mid-2000s kids. Katara especially was absolutely absurd the way that she acted, considering the culture she was supposed to be from. But Sokka as well. Aang wasn't as bad. Also, the finale was a train wreck. It was a complete mess. Like, people remember it because it had a really pretty fight, but like it flubbed its two biggest story beats badly.
Yeah.
Zuko should not have lost that fight. That's absurd. Like that was pure feminist girl power that absolutely ruined this entire arc. And Aang was never resolved his main conflict. He just Deus Ex Machina his way around it.
Yep. And like there, like to be fair to it, it did imply certain things about how the conflict would go. You do have the Avatar state. It was brought up before. But the thing is that he never demonstrated the power as described in the way that would be satisfying. Like it was.
I actually think it's a much bigger deal that Zuko's big moment was taken by Katara. Like I think that honestly, because Zuko was easily the best character in the show. He was a fantastic character. Again, I don't think The Last Airbender was bad. Like people here.
Anyway, let's move on from The Last Airbender.
Not bad. It's off topic.
It was commoner. It was good for the commoners.
Yes.
The
main point I was trying to make with it is that, like, if you go to Japan and look at the good shonen in Japan, they're pretty much like the really good ones are going to be better than The Last Airbender, Yu Yu Hakusho, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Even like I would argue My Hero Academia is actually better, at least in the first 3 seasons. But
I mean, it is in general. Like it's like the benefit of anime is that you have multiple passes of writing that certain Western shows just don't have in the same way. There's an editorial intent. Like Order of the Flame smells to me like it's mostly an editor working through the mangaka. It's never going to get an anime. Red Hood was
Yeah,
better.
that's one of the interesting things about manga too, is that like the editor really does have a massive impact. I remember when My Hero Academia switched editors after the war arc, everybody was unhappy. And it's true, there was like a bit of a downswing in the manga after that. Like there was clearly a difference in the manga.
Yeah.
Inuyasha was a better show. Yeah, it was. But my point was like, we go, oh, let's go to the east and make and like see if an anime studio will take it. Like, did you see the shit Rick and Morty thing that they did? Absolutely awful.
No, I avoided it.
I
And I
didn't watch.
actually,
No, like I've not seen in full, but like just a little bit. Like it's clearly awful, right?
yeah.
Um, and the like saying, oh, if we go to the east, like no, you're not gonna make money if you are a right wing creator. You're just not.
Yep.
And that shouldn't really, and that can't be your goal, because if that's your goal, then you wouldn't be doing this, right?
Well, like I should say, I guess we should split it between making money versus like mainstream money and neo patronage money. You know, there's
unless there is one exception. You can do it if you do something like, as we said the last time we talked about this, John Della Rose does, which is make yourself into a brand. That's doable. It can be done. I know multiple people who have done it. John's not the only one. Isaac Young is in the process of it and doing a pretty good job of it.
Oh yeah,
And
we are
I
Isaac
feel
Young
like that.
stands here.
Yes, we are. Niemeyer has tried and done it with less success than Della Rose, but with success. His Kickstarters make money.
Yep.
So, like, he's absolutely doing it. So it is doable, but not in the way, like, if you're looking to make money by, like, I write 4 books a year, you know, it's not going to happen.
Nope.
Right? Like, or even like, or 2 books, maybe 4 actually might be okay if you market it properly and you make yourself present and you like have a lot of content, but like 2, right? 2 books, like it's not going to happen. And like what I'm doing, for example, which is with After Camelot. So why did I write After Camelot? I didn't write, like, I'm not going to make any money off of it. I know I'm not going to make any money off of it. I'm going to try and make what money I can off of it, right? Like, I don't want to make nothing. But at the same time, it's like the goal for After Camelot isn't like, this is going to be the thing that's going to propel me into quitting my job, right? Like,
yeah,
that's not the goal of After Camelot. The goal of After Camelot is twofold. Number one, I want to get an audience. I don't really have one. Hi, people listening right now. You're the closest.
we love you.
We do. Like, I would like to gain an audience. Number 2, I'd like to make some extra pocket change, right? If I can make 1K, that would be swell. Yeah. I would be happy with that, and it would honestly be really helpful. And then, like, so for my next book, maybe I can, make like 2K, and maybe there'll be people who will be interested in what I have to say. I am making this because I like to write. I think I have something to say. I think there's something I could say in these books. The thing about this book is, like, I'm not doing it because, like, oh man, I just want to make something really fun or whatever. Like, I do want After Camelot to be enjoyable to read. In fact, I think that is a prerequisite. Again, this was mentioned on Twitter as well. I think that something has to be enjoyable to read. Otherwise, it's a failure. And yes, something making you uncomfortable can still be enjoyable to read. One of the prime examples is A Brave New World. I find A Brave New World hugely entertaining. I really like that book. After Camelot, no, not yet. It's being marketed. Like, it's being sold to, like, currently a publisher is considering it. And if they turn it down, then I will go to other publishers. And if everyone turns it down, I'll go to Royal Road and run a Kickstarter. So we'll see what happens. So keep your eyes peeled. I will make an announcement and I will do like a full marketing blitz when I'm actually able to. Ben has been beta reading and helping a lot with brainstorming for it. So he knows what's down, and
It's pretty good.
I'm very happy with it. Anyway, like, Brave New World is a great example of a book that is not fun. It's not at all. I don't think it's fun. It's also not, it's definitely designed to make you uncomfortable. You shouldn't be comfortable when reading it. But is it
Hmm.
not entertaining? No, I think it's really entertaining. I'm always entertained when I read Brave New World. I also think Brave New World is a very profound book. It's a great book. Uh,
Yeah,
like,
it's yeah, like like there's been a loss of a culture of reading for self benefit.
mhm.
Like I read as a child, I read a lot of Star Wars and science fiction and stuff like that. Some fantasy, Redwall, a lot of English fantasy novels from my parents and grandparents' collections. And I read stuff and I did it for the enjoyment of it. And I look down on things like Dostoevsky. Oh, these are the popular things, the things that the hoity-toity who look down on me do.
Yeah.
I had a certain type of resentment for the elite,
Mhm.
because I understood even at a young age that they hated me, but I didn't understand that they were in themselves like pretenders, barely literate savages, trying to shit on everything good and holy to a culture, with sacred icons that weren't, quote unquote, sacred to God in the same way that a picture of Jesus on the cross should be. But they were still, cornerstones of the culture, the great American novel, quote unquote. Um, but it's like but I did read things like Pilgrim's Progress, Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Beowulf, tons of the Greek myths, but not like Percy Jackson. I mean, I read the Greek myths.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Things like 1066, Robert E. Howard, and then I found people like John C. Wright, and there was a period in between that when I was tired of all these things that I was reading, but I still hadn't discovered it. Where it was like, I guess I'm just gonna read things like Homestuck and whatnot, which are good reads in its own way, but it's based on internet culture. It's fundamentally a reflection of the culture, not necessarily a high work of art. If you want a perfect image of whatever the internet culture was doing in the year that the particular parts of the story were written, um, because he didn't, you know, you have to look at that sort of thing. Um, like you can use it as a gauge, and it's interesting, it's fascinating for what it is, but it's not necessarily anything valuable as it was anymore. Um, Reading things like 1001 Nights, looking into how the Arabians' culture looks, but I did it without understanding. I just did it because it entertained me. But if you read high culture with an eye for entertainment, you won't be disappointed. Uh, these things have um, true value. You don't have to read the explicitly boring ones. Um, you know, but you can read something like Fantastes by George MacDonald. Fantastes is an absolutely aristocratic book. It is a book for young men to read, for older men to remember, to read for themselves, as they might go into another infantilization as they get older. Um, things like John Carter, the Princess of Mars series, Barsoom. That has some value to it, but and it has some value as a an American novel, but it how do I want to put it? It is closer to pulp than Fantastes is. It's what I'm trying to say is that you know the the loss of culture that we've had over the last um, has it almost been 100 years? Has it been 100 years? The loss of culture that we've had since World War One, has finally peaked, and it peaked really, 5-10 years ago by now, and we're still sort of like watching it collapse like a slow blimp deflation, because it was a giant self-referential system. Harper Collins somehow paying Biden, $10 million for his memoirs. Where'd they get that money? Do I want to know? Do I have the security clearances to know? No. All these things are beyond us and propped up, by powers that we have no control over. Therefore, we should set it aside, and pursue, that higher nature. Pursue God. Pursue not writing just for. I think it'll be really cool if there's like 3 Death Stars. Okay, that we do Death Star again. um, it's beyond laser swords, beyond the dragon. Like there's I so I was last night I was coming away from my bouncing job, and I was running an errand for a friend in exchange for being let loose a little early, not having to do my chores. And I met a gentleman at a gas station, a Jewish man, and we argued for about an hour over the nature of truth and stuff like that. And of course, my ultimate conclusion was this man absolutely would rather be lit on fire than admit truth is truth. That there's an iron nature to truth. All right, he skimmied and shook and dodged and weaved and flattered, whatever he could do to avoid admitting that there is a real, existent, hard truth. I enjoyed it. It was like a workout for me. Uh, but in the end, I knew I had got him when he tried to trauma dump about having a drug induced trip where he thought he was a. Now this guy looked older than me. I want to be clear, and I'm well past my half 30s. Uh, where he was a little girl during the Holocaust, and I ignored it completely. And he also called me too smart for my own good. Uh, that's when you've out argued them somehow. But he went away refusing to accept that there is a thing of truth. When I ignored his last plays, he had lost. You don't even need to argue everything. You have to have these high ideas of truth, these ironclad definitions. Um, if you say I only want my enjoyment, you will find that you only have your enjoyment. But if you say I want, um, and we're not even like advertising people at this point, not as a show, but like in the sense of the stream, you know, it, if you don't go into what you're reading and living through with a certain amount of um, circumspection, you're going to excuse me you're going to be lost. I shouldn't have leaned forward. I'm now gaseous. You're going to lose a certain part of yourself that could grow higher from the hard books you're reading. Like you're not quoting the 12 laws of power or the 48 laws of power or the 666 laws of power. What you're doing is you're expanding yourself and your mind and your ability to comprehend your situation through the misfortune of these characters on the page. Their arrogance and pride, their ideas. you know are you rotting like Toru at the end of the Sea of Fertility quadrilogy, no longer the bright shining star or the hard steel of Kyoyaki and his first resurrection, not even the beauty of his third, but rather just blind wannabe lech with the ugliest girl in Japan doting on you, but unable to properly take care of you because of her own mental illness. The angel decayed. As the decay of the angel is the title of that novel. Honda himself, an old man, going to Gishu Temple to try and talk to an ancient friend, one of the last people who know anything about what happened before. All that generation completely gone away. Um, what is what is he to do? He talks to her and she says, "Oh, I didn't know him." What do you mean? You had an illegitimate child that you were forced to abort. Did My theory is what he's saying is that because of course this is a Buddhist conception of reality through these novels, is that she did not know him because she had no idea of who he was, because every incarnation would have been a different person, and Kiyoyaki was just a reincarnation of a soul from previous times. How could she know him? How could she have a connection to this world? She's a practicing Buddhist abbess. These things come with a detachment from reality that brings her to a sort of higher state of knowledge. I know that my brother, when he was alive, had his sin issue the same as I do. But the thing is that when you discover it, when you have to pick through his things and you discover the unfortunate truths about someone else's character, you know them better, but you also wish you didn't. She did not know Kiyoyaki. He was a flame that burned out well before his time, and through unfortunate circumstances that ultimately led her to being an abbess, but ultimately did not lead her to a deeper knowledge of her lover. Um, it's the same way with reading. We live in the rotted remains of a fortune and a person with an ugly caretaker that we are thankfully too blind to see. But her madness prevents us from enjoying anything or even being clean. But the choice we have is to, find that higher level, that spirit that permeates through the culture, that fire, that sacred space that God always prepares within a culture, the spirit of its culture. When you look at the Chinese and their, sort of nouveau riche, oh, I bought all this wine, it is the best wine. And so do you drink it? No, I let it appreciate in the skyscraper that I rent out because we have so many skyscrapers, the land is cheap. Yes, that is the sign of a high culture, friend. They buy all the right things. But in reality, you look at it and you see things like Journey to the West and the Tao, and certain, thoughts. The Japanese, Shinto, this spirit of death that they keep for themselves. Consider yourself a dead man already. It has a high culture to it that just going, oh yes, I bought all the wine from a certain vineyard. I This is truly, it will appreciate in value. And of course, I am so cultured for choosing the right famous wine. Ridiculous nonsense. you know you should read for your choices, but I'm saying that you should also modify your choices, so that you have a taste for higher culture knowledge, not just is this like Star Wars enough? Am I Star Wars enough for this? Yes, Star Wars is fun, but it was dead. Read Rogue Squadron, I guess, or something. But also, you have Galaxy's Edge, but also you can read things like Stanislaw Lem and the First Lensman, that have tons of value to them in ways that you don't see in something written, to reach 50 books to 50K or whatever it's called. Read some China Mielville. Perdido Street Station is fantastic dystopian science fiction. The villain is unable to properly keep his form, so but he's desperate to look at himself. There's things to it, that can entertain your mind, that can stretch out your ability to think and to have reason. um it's if you're there, I think there's a solid reason why things like African American culture within America has declined so much. And it's not just the CIA, introducing crack into or the FBI introducing crack or whoever. It's the fact that they refuse to culture police themselves and allowed things like rap and whatnot to take root without, exterminating it or, ensuring that some other higher culture takes root. It's sure, a lot of CIA money probably went into that stuff. There was a lot of Jewish money as well. It's a matter of fact. Um, but it's ultimately a loss of the people and the culture and what they could have been. What the resentments they could have given away that are instead inflamed to the point where they're not just an underclass, but an underclass in riot. It's you're unable to be higher than the the art that you produce. Actually, that's a good way to put it. You're as high as the art you consume. How does that sound, Anthony?
Makes sense.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, I mean, the other thing is that, and this is the real, Mega Buster Shepherd says Ben shut it down. This is the real shutdown thing, which is that Black American culture was never that high to begin with. Uh, it was all. It's true. It was like the envy of the of Black cultures around the world, but look who it was competing against.
Yeah, like it's you know even then I say that they had an opportunity for it, but the fundamental thing that they would have had to given up is their resentment of white folk, and that's just not
Yeah,
happening. Fundamentally, the lower class always resents the higher class. Uh, you know, in places like England and America, there was a symbiotic relationship that went pretty well. But like I remember, I read the story about like a sultan had ambassadors from Mali show up, and he decided that they would be comfortable if they had a black housekeeper. So he sent them one of his black slaves. It was like the Sultan of Morocco or something, and they killed and ate her raw and like showed up and thank you, and said, "Oh, thank you so much for this wonderful, tasteful serve." Like like assuming this is even real, it's like this is what people thought of them. I've read the Arabian Nights. The Arabians were constant in if you read it, you realize that the Arabians were in constant deathly fear of their black slaves, in ways that frankly no American Southern plantation owner ever was. Um, like anyway, it's it's I say things like that, not to incense, the people or whatever, to insult in ways that think, heaven forbid I could say more and talk more and be totally accurate. Like when you look at a mugshot, and if you had actually shown this picture to someone, they would assume it's in parody. And built poorly taste satire. Is not the problem of the man seeing the picture or showing the picture. It's the problem of the person having their picture taken. The like the I keep like this channel keeps dedicating itself to the higher things, but we haven't really done enough for that, and it bothers me. So I'm hoping soon I'll be able to change that for the better. I am, like it's not free, sadly, to raise your status and morals and class. And I don't mean in the sense of stuffy Yankee type, reaching upper middle class with a small business, valuable small business. I mean in the sense of um, like the benefit that the people had in the past is that they didn't have the internet. They didn't have a million distractions all the time. They didn't have doom scrolling. Like they could go out and get drunk and stuff like that, but that costs money and that cost a certain amount of social capital. Dostoevsky, was famous for gambling and then rushing out a chapter so that he could pay his gambling debt. The there's there's something that we just miss, that we don't have. Maybe it's something we have, like the internet. Maybe it's something that we experience, that's preventing like right wingers from taking political power in ways that they never they never had a problem with before. Like maybe it's just the spirit of the age, God willingly dampening down the spirit of the men so that the punishment may be complete. You know, uh, Maybe if there had been a strong, actually right wing leader in the White House, which even though Trump's great, he's not, he's a liberal, a moderate liberal at best. Um, Maybe if we had one, we wouldn't have these troubles in places like Gaza. The tail wouldn't wag the dog. Uh, but we do have these troubles, and we do have to learn about them, to know about them. Even if we shut down the internet, we still have to experience, people talking about it, as well as the spiritual reverberations that uh, uh, will affect you as time goes on. Um, and it's hard to. It's very frustrating, I'm afraid to say, because you want more and you want better, but it just, unless you make it, unless you take it for yourself, you're just not going to get it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have much to add except like we need to start creating. We are creating culture. It's one of the reasons why I know that some people on the right are like aren't huge fans of like people like Critical Drinker and Mahler. I do give them credit enough that they deserve to be listened to because they do create and they do put money into creation, and
Yeah.
I can respect that. Um, Even though I do think that they got to do better at it. I do think that like their work needs to be better, Drinker especially, but uh, Mahler too. Like Mahler and Drinker have like they put out like a fundraiser to start their own like independent movie studio basically, and it's like, you know what? That's the sort of thing that does need to happen, right? Like, even though, like, would I ideally pick Drinker and Mahler, who are essentially old school liberals, right? To be the ones to do it? No, I wouldn't, but they are doing it. So, like, I can't really, they're not doing anything wrong and they are creating. We do need to create. Like, that's the thing again, like with After Camelot, I wrote it because I had something to say. It came from the writing of the last chapter of the book, The Last Fight of Sir Lancelot, and it came out really well, and it was picked up by a small press, an anthology. And I'm like, you know what? I think I have something to say about like this setting and this world and these people. Not because like, and I think I can get rich off of it. I don't, but I do think that it's worthwhile to get these thoughts into the world and this perspective into the world and for people to consider it. And it does take a certain, you want to say ego, but that might not even be right, because on the other hand, to have these sorts of skills and abilities and do nothing with them is also prideful. So you need to be honest with yourself. Like, how good are you? How good of a writer am I? Well, I'm a pretty good writer. If I were to deny that I was a pretty good writer, I would be being dishonest. It wouldn't be meaningful. Like it would be a false humility, which is really a form of pride, right? Um, I'm not saying like I need to be accurate about how good of a writer I am, like, and I think I actually am fairly accurate with in my own assessment. Like, I think I am pretty fair at who I think is better and who I think is worse than me. And the things that I am good at and the things I am not good at. I try to be very clear-headed about it. Nevertheless, I am above average. I have gotten a lot of practice. I did the whole thing, like John C. Wright says, you got to write 1,000,000 words before you can be good. Well, I've done that. So I've hit that point. I've been writing for years. I've been involved in the industry for years. I read a lot. So to say that, like, oh, but I don't have anything worth saying, like that, my writing skill, like I shouldn't be using it. Like, it's arrogant to think anybody would care what I have to say. No, what's arrogant is to think that you can hide your talents, right?
Yep.
Like, that's not to say that I think that I am the greatest writer ever or that I'm the next Tolkien or whatever. That's absurd and ridiculous. But to lie and be like, no, I don't think I'm that good. Like, no, I do think that I'm good. I think I'm better than the average writer.
Yep.
And I think, for that matter, I think you certainly are. I even think that Ken is. I say, and the reason the incredulity is not like even Ken, like Ken's an actor. He's not really a writer, right? Like, by trade, by profession. It wasn't a thing he grew up doing like I did and like Ben did, right? Like,
Yep.
So when I say that, like, I want to be very clear. It's not out of like incredulity that even Ken could do it. It's that, like, Ken isn't even a writer by trade, and I think he's actually probably better than average. Now, the great debate of the, that we joke about on here of like which of the three of us is the best writer, and it's actually David, is all well and good. But nevertheless, all three of us have something to say, I think. And I think that all three of us, like, to act like we don't. Now, Ken, not that you're obligated to do anything, and Ken does have other artistic pursuits that he does try and pursue, and more power to him, along with his writing. But in my case, I've wanted to be a writer since growing up. And again, like, I think that there's an unhealthy way of going, like, you have an ego about this or whatever. It's like, no, that's like, that would just be false humility. It would be false modesty. It would be a lie to say, like, I don't have anything to say. I don't have any, my skill as a writer cannot benefit humanity in any way. Like, well, in that case, then you're just not using your talents, right, to benefit the world. You're hiding them under a bushel, right?
Yep.
You're burying them, and that's prideful. Like you think that you can waste your life in that way.
Yes.
So all of this is to say that I do think that we who are writers, like, there is a certain responsibility to be like, you're not obligated to do anything in any particular circumstance, right? There can be times and places where it's not practical or whatever. But if you feel like you can do it, and you feel like it's something that you'd be good at, and you have something to say, then say it. If you think that the culture needs to be changed, then change it. And I think that that's a good place to end it.
Yep. I agree. I want to thank you all for joining. Next week, we may have a guest. Battleborn Mag's editor is graciously coming by. I think it's either this week or next week. I forget which. The next week coming, I mean. I'll make sure to confirm with him as he comes back from that publication, because we do want to, of course, support people in our space. You have to understand, like, even though we may have a difference in opinion with someone of more pulp rev or Iron Age mindset, fundamentally, we are supporting our people. Same with characters like Bronze Age Pervert or Vox Day, who are not the same at all, of course, but it's worth supporting them just to see it. I hope to have the formatting done soon. I've got most of it done, but it's been a week. I'll talk to you guys later. Do keep this in mind. If you have a choice between something of the, shall we say, um, fun Star Wars variety, or something new that may be, worth reading but not quite as fun. Choose the thing that'll grow you better as a person, and I think you'll be much happier for it in the end. Cultured, higher souled, closer to God, even if you're reading the right things.